am successful. I look for and find opportunities where others see nothing. I am a lifetime learner. I am solution focused. I see only solutions. I am a solution. My name is Lanre Olusola, and this is your go-to space for very practical, mind-transforming conversations that empower you to overcome life's biggest challenges. So you may be struggling with, making money. You may be struggling with fear, anxiety, the imposter syndrome. You may be struggling in your relationships and in your career. You may even be struggling with living in a country like Nigeria today. You don't know which way to go, what to do, and how to prosper and to profit from the potentials that we have as a nation. Together on this podcast, we will be working with you to transform your mind by the quality of conversations that we hold. Now we're diving into the very, very critical topic of today, the potential greatness in Nigeria. And our conversation today will be focused on facts, on data, and our untapped potential as a people, as a nation, our growing youth population, artificial intelligence, ICT, social media, soft power, Afrobeats, the creative economy, and art. Wow. I've got none other, right, that can really justify this conversation and deal with this matter like my brother from another mother, Femi Adiagbo. He's a friend who consistently has challenged me. He's a brother who is absolutely loyal, a thinker who thinks out of the box, a visionary who sees beyond boundaries. He's a disruptor who constantly innovates, extremely focused guy, extremely disciplined guy, dedicated towards excellence. I worked with him. I had the rare privilege to work with him for about 3 years, serving the Federal Republic of Nigeria in the Obasanjo era, serving in the Ministry of Education. He's an exceptionally brilliant mind that continues to challenge status quo. Femi is a law graduate, technology advisor, and creative economy leader that specializes in AI, policymaking, and digital transformation. He has advised at ministerial and presidential levels, speaking to various platforms, especially, great platforms like United Nations General Assembly. His mission is to maximize AI and technology investments for Africa's growth in the global creative economy. Listeners, now this is not just another podcast. This is your gateway to success if you're in AI, if you're in technology, if you're, looking for soft power and looking for a way, to blow. It's not just about trying to blow. It's about understanding the fundamental principles, that you need to use to build the foundations. So let's dive into the conversation. Femi, welcome to my podcast. How are you today?
Good morning, Lanre. It's a pleasure to be with you, as always.
Awesome.
Thanks for the amazing introduction. My head is swelling here, but well, yeah, it's a girl. You do an amazing work in terms of transforming lives. You're one of the few people I call the Oracle himself.
Thank you very much. Now, Femi, over the last 10 years, I've done in-depth studies and research into the secrets and the principles of the world's most successful people. I've studied the likes of Oprah Winfrey, Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, J.P. Morgan, Henry Ford, Bill Gates, Beyonce, name it, Burna Boy, Whiskey, name them in all fields, Cristiano Ronaldo, Michael Phelps, Lionel Messi, and I found 50 common principles and secrets that they all have and they all live by. And over the last 4 years, I've taught these fundamental principles in master classes all across the world. Now, I've shared the document with you, and I've asked that you choose your own top 5. And having worked with top leaders, executives up until presidential levels, what will be your own top 5 fundamentals, secrets, and principles, and why. We've got about 7 minutes to just discuss this before we jump into, this burning issue about Nigeria. I love talking about Nigeria, and you love talking about Nigeria, and the viewers are going to love our conversation about Nigeria. But let's talk about these 5 core pillars and fundamental principles and secrets of success first. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Larry. It was a very difficult one to zero in on 5. Very difficult, I must say. But I think in the end I chose vision. Because without vision, there's really no. And I remember you also saying this. I think we had a conversation back in 2008. We were having lunch, and you were talking about vision and visualization. That can you imagine if a leader comes up and says to them in Mushin that, look at this, this is what Mushin will be like in 5 years' time. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, I do.
So
I do.
that without vision, really, well, there's nothing really. You've got to envision an objective or an end destination. So I think vision is quite critical. Communication is key, I think, because it's like winking in the dark. If you don't communicate, it's like, for example, you have an object of your desires and you're stood in the dark winking. She's not likely to know, in a sense. But of course, communication is also a bit more difficult than that. I've been reading a book called, and forget the title because it's called Surrounded by Idiots. I forgot the name of the author. It's an amazing book.
Wow.
And the key takeaway I've gotten so far is that communication is ultimately determined by the person listening. So, not by the person sending out the signal. So, in a sense, it's a complex thing, but you have to communicate. And then flexibility, I think, is key. Business schools teach all this thing about tunnel vision. The macro environment at times changes in such a way that, if you're not flexible, you'll basically be left behind. So you've got to be, I think, flexible in your thought patterns. You've got to be flexible in your philosophical leanings, even. Because you live in a world and in an environment that's constantly changing. Integrity is key for me. Integrity means different things to different people. And I think it exists on a spectrum as well. Some will argue that in Nigeria is no longer an asset, that it's actually a liability. And that you cannot be subjective in an objective, or you cannot be objective in a subjective environment. But I think these are the things that center the human being. So I think integrity, fidelity to your own principles, enable you to achieve better, because then you're not subject to things that oppose the core beliefs you have. So I think integrity is quite key. And I think self-esteem is critical. I actually think at the core of most problems we face in Nigeria today lies self-esteem. Even corruption, which we, of course, identify as a key problem, may have its core in self-esteem. I'm not sure. Self-esteem, a culture of not having shame, And when you have self-esteem, you are less likely to get caught in the rat race of negative competition. You are less likely to worry yourself about what car Lanre just bought yesterday, and you having one of that becomes what defines you. So self-esteem and how to develop it may be things we need to look at from a curriculum viewpoint. Because if you look at a lot of the of the social media activity today, I see a lot of self-esteem issues. I see a lot of seeking for validation, lying for validation. It's as if that's all it is about. And once you hand over your esteem to other people to determine, then you're not really living your own life, are you? You're living for other people.
Wow.
And at the end of the day, you came alone, and the day you face your maker, you'll be going alone. So I think self-esteem is well, it was very tough, very, very tough, because very tough. But yes.
And I know you leave these fundamental principles, the ability to envision, you thrive on effectively communicating and articulating, your point so succinctly. Also, you thrive on integrity and you strive, to hold a healthy sense of self-worth and self-esteem in everything that you do. And of course, in certain areas, Femi, you are very, very flexible, but in certain areas, you're quite principled.
Yes.
I will call it principled in certain areas. All right. Yeah. So thank you very much, Femi, for sharing those very, very, very core values of yours. Vision. I know you're a man of vision, and everything you do is driven by vision. You're a man that strives to effectively communicate and articulate your points without emotion. You lay it out, line upon line, precept upon precept, and you are very articulate in the way that you present your points. I also know that you're a man of integrity. This is one of the reasons why we clicked. You say what you mean what you say, and you are quite committed to your promises. You're also a man that strives to provide self-care for himself. And one of the critical ways that you provide self-care is self-esteem, self-confidence, self-belief, and all of those things. And you are quite flexible in certain areas, but in certain other areas, you are quite principled. And this is also about flexibility, to know when, to be flexible, to accept certain things, and to know when not to. That's really the master key to flexibility. Flexibility does not mean that you lie down on the floor and you let everybody just steamroll you.
Steamroll over you, yes.
Yeah. So I haven't said all of that. Let's dive into the Nigerian conversation. The topic is the potential greatness in Nigeria. You and I have had some very, very deep conversations over the last 2 decades. And, you often roll out data that I'm wondering, where the hell does this guy find this kind of data? What kind of mind does this guy have, right? So a case in hand is, the amount of money we spend on buying, hair attachments, and so Femi, just roll out your data. Because it's important for us to recognize this, because there's an untapped economic potential. There is an immense area that we are not even looking at. We're not even considering. We're calculating GDP like every other Western country calculates their GDP. But unfortunately, in our own country, there's so much money that is going through the informal system. So just educate us, as you've always educated me. Over to you.
Lanre, thank you. You started at a good place. I honestly don't think anybody knows Nigeria's GDP. So I don't even bother, looking at those GDP. I believe those figures do not reflect the Nigerian reality at all. Because when you look at expenditure, let's even move away from statistical data. Let's look at what I call cognitive data, what we can see. Everybody can take their calculators and think, okay, the Owambe economy in Nigeria is low. Birthdays, burials, children births, and think of the scale across 36 states, 5 days a week, or even 7 days a week now in some cases. You see event centers on Monday. I've called people at times to business. We're at a birthday. Oh, sorry, we're at somebody's night. I'm like, on Monday? How does that work? On Tuesday, no, we just quickly went. And I'm like, so now, that's probably one of Nigeria's largest economies, is the party economy, actually. It's probably one of the biggest. One of the biggest concentration points of economic activity, because you get your agri chain in there, food, and we've now turned it into an art form. It's an art form now. You know, they roll it out. You know, it is just rolled out. You get fashion. You get your social cohesion, because let's be honest, there are nice forums for us meeting, having a banter and what have you. So you get a whole value chain. I would say about 30 sectors are impacted.
Wow.
Yeah, security men will be there, DJ will come, comedian will come, interior decorator will come, lighting will come. Those, I mean, you know, it's a whole. Printers will have their own stay there. The digital economy guys too will come. The ones flying a drone to give you panoramic view will come. Photography will come. Media will come. Makeup artists will come. It's an unbelievable aggregation of economic activity. But when you sit down and break it down, during COVID, I made a determination not to spend 1 naira anymore on buying foreign alcohol. I've only bought Agbaluma liquor from Dala since COVID with my money. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't have I don't drink wine, I don't drink whiskey. This is just my own kind of like protest in a sense. And that's because if you put 10 plates of rice on a table in an Owambe, if you look at the economic value, you know, let's say, okay, what, 3,000 per plate? I don't know, 4,000 per plate, let's say cost price. So let's say 40K. Think of the effort that's gone into that 40K. People cooking, sweating, doing all sorts, carrying, and then you put a bottle of whiskey. That's 150K or 200K. It has swallowed up the whole value of your local content, because you don't make that bottle of whiskey. So the value chain for that bottle of whiskey is very limited. The chunk of the money actually goes to the person who makes it. And that's why you see brands like LVMH, LVMH's owner becoming the richest man in the world, when he's been overtaken now. But, you know, because alcohol is a considerable part of that portfolio, and we consume this like water in Nigeria. And we've consumed it now to the point there's even no accurate data anymore. Nobody knows. Anybody that tells you they know the level of alcohol importation in Nigeria is lying to you. Because importation, smuggling, fake, adulterated ones. But this is the only place I know where you go to a function and you are literally being begged with champagne, being begged with whiskey. Larry, you and I have attended functions abroad. The waiter comes and puts a tipple in your glass. No. It's a bottle here, and it's got to be DP, it's got to be DP Rosé, it's got to be. Now, let's think of the intrinsic value of the alcohol. What happens to it, Larry?
Wow.
Within an hour, it's in the bathroom. It's gone. It's gone. There is no intrinsic value left behind. It is deposited in the loo. And okay, there's a temporal high, probably a headache afterwards. It just doesn't do any, Don't get me wrong, I drink. I'm not being moralistic. I'm being economic. A few years ago, there was a study done by the, I think, US Department of Agri and NBS. And at that time, and I'm going back to probably 2016, 17, which was the last time they accurately captured that data. Our alcohol imports were about $8 billion. You see, so you can't drink $8 billion of alcohol. Now I'm sure it is, I'm sure nobody, it can be anything. It can be anything now with the amount of consumption. And the increased vanity around it. Oh, we don't do 18-year whiskey. It's got to be 38 year. It's got to be 50. At times I'm sure we don't even know the difference for those who are not connoisseurs of this. But when you look at the value of that, it impacts your forex. I know government policy, that's a different kettle of fish. But in terms of the citizen habits as well, these are things we need to look at. You mentioned hair, and it's quite funny. There was an analysis I did many years back. I called it the hair versus tractor analysis. And I looked at the amount of monies some countries spent importing hair, and how much they spent importing tractors, as it were. And in that period of 2013 to 2016, we spent in Nigeria, then we spent about $757 million importing hair. This is the official data that was captured. I'm not talking about the ones coming in through suitcases or other things. You understand what I mean? So this is what was officially captured. If you look at Thailand, for example, if you look at, was this 20? Let me just show you this data for that year. So if you look at Thailand, for example, in 2015, which was the last real, because after that, the data sources just went all over the place. Thailand spent $4.9 million importing hair because they're happy with their own hair. And they spent $231 million that year importing tractors. So for every dollar they spent importing hair, they spent 50 times importing tractor for agricultural cultivation. That year we spent $211 million, yes, importing fake hair, and we spent 230 importing tractors. So when you do the ratio analysis, we spent 1.09 on agricultural inputs of tractors that we spent on hair. Please, I don't want our ladies to get me wrong. They look beautiful in their Indian hair, and because you could face accusations of being misogynistic. But who's going to import? Who is going to sell rice to who? In that period, who? The person who is spending 50 times on a critical input, or the person who is in a ratio of 1-to-1. I mean, this is just common sense. And you look at the trend. If I look at the ratio I did Djibouti, it was 53 times. So every dollar they spent 53 times on tractor. If I look at, Senegal spent 3 times. Tanzania was close to us. So I think it's an African thing. This goes again to the, there's a convenience argument, because there's an argument as well about our hair is a bit tough and knotty and it's difficult to manage. It's just simpler to wear a wig, get up and go. Times have also changed. A lot of women are in the workplace, they're on the move. They don't have the time to be sitting down and, faffing around with hair in that sense. So we need to find solutions. How can we manufacture locally? How can we manufacture locally? You know, we need to come to that kind of place of discussion. But we cannot be importing hair from, well, I've heard all sorts about where the hair comes from. You know, I don't know whether it's true. I've seen some videos, you know, people grow the hair, they sit down in temples, they cut the hair, and, you know. So these are some of the things we need to look at in terms of real economic rejuvenation, which goes around that self-esteem, goes around our vanity quotient. So yes, those are very, very important things.
Wow.
Of late, I'm sure you've read that the NBS has agreed at last to start capturing illicit economy, you know, in our GDP computation. You know, it's something I've been on about for, I'm sure we've had this conversation countless times.
Over the last 2 decades, definitely.
And when I pick on the issue of pay for play sex, at times people get all funny about it. But this is an elephant dancing. It's been dancing in the room for 30 years. Started with the sugar daddy culture, then it moved to it's been dancing in the room. Now, I estimate that sector, by my own back of the envelope calculations, to be at least 10 trillion.
Wow. How do you break that down?
Okay.
$10 trillion. Naira, okay.
Yeah. Now, let me give you a very basic template of calculation. There are 26 million females between the age bands of 17 to 29. So let us first narrow this activity to just that band. Anybody outside that band doesn't do that kind of thing. No, totally. So that's 2.6 million females, our children. If they do 25,000 naira every week, that's already 3.38 trillion naira.
Wow. Weekly?
No, yearly. That comes to yearly. If you multiply by 52 weeks, you come to your yearly. So if I adjust for inflation from when I last ran this template at 3 times, that's assuming things have gone up 3 times in the past 10 years, which you and I know is also not true. It's conservative. You're already over 10 trillion.
Wow. So you've talked about alcohol, you've talked about the Owambe economy, you've talked about hair, you are now talking about pay for sex. And these are some of the things that it's very, very critical for us to begin to take into consideration as we begin to transition into, tapping into our true potential and finding solutions. There's a vanity economy, there's a wasteful economy that is not being tapped. Now, what are the key sectors in Nigeria, right, that have immense potential? Looking at our blowing youth population, how can we take advantage of the youth, right? And what are those, economic factors or those potential areas in our economy that we need to begin to look at?
Okay. Now, one, let me quickly wrap up on that so that I don't stand at the risk of being misunderstood. I'm not encouraging this economy. I'm just saying that it's economic activity. It is there. It is there. Because that prostitute or drug dealer, don't let us even go to the drugs one. I don't think that can be quantified anymore as well. We are now a major consumption point, as you know. NDLEA is busting labs. I mean, it's unbelievable. But there are 2 things we should ask ourselves. So where are Nigerians finding the money to buy these services? These illicits. Where are they finding the money to booze, pay for sex at this rate? and snort coke and all sorts of expensive drugs. That must mean that your GDP computations are wrong ab initio, because where is that capital actually mobilized from? And then we move to the next question of morality. So you see, in the UK, the EU, a few European companies started calculating this years ago as part of their GDP, because it's there. You can't deny it. And that person is also going to go to the market. They're going to buy chicken. Their behavior is also going to affect economic outcomes. So you can't keep denying it. You acknowledge it first. It is there. We now say, okay, now, how can we create substitute activity for those who want substitute activity? Because if you look at a young lady doing this kind of thing, some may fall into it because of abuse from young age. Maybe the parents died early, the society doesn't have the structure to look after them, they fell into the hands of some nasty family members who started molesting them, and then it goes on from there. Some, it's a choice. They don't want to work. They've made up their minds, this is the way to make quick money. I'm going to target men who have money. I'm going to make money. I want a soft life. End of story. So maybe those ones, you just have to agree that it's their choice. That's what they want to do. Then there are those who are influenced by peer pressure. It's a whole gamut of reasons. So we shouldn't be judgmental, but we should say, okay, for those who want to do something else, how do we create substitute economies or economic activity? Who is going to fund it? Where is it going to come from? Who is going to pay for that substitute economy? And this is what happens in the sense of global trade. So if I'm importing from India my textiles, and I can say, you know what, how can I transfer from the $6 billion that we spend every year importing textiles from India alone, 6 billion USD. How can I cut that in half? I want to save 3 billion and then transfer that 3 billion to creative economy activity, where I can absorb some of this youth who want to do the right thing but say there's no opportunity or can't find the opportunity. So it's got to be very deliberate economic disentanglement. This is what I import, and I want to reduce that by 20%, transit it to local. Now, what inputs do I need in terms of human resource? Am I catering for that through curriculum in schools? Should I set up special vocational institutions to do that? That was a project we worked on in education, the VEI, so that it becomes like New York School of Fashion. It becomes this, it becomes that, so some may go into that. And then as we refine and build their capabilities, then we can look at even exporting. I think we've missed a few opportunities of late. I saw the French president wearing Ashoke recently on a state visit that President Tinubu took to France. I'd have expected us to have like 20 of our young designers in the room. I'd have expected our entire entourage. Kampala, Adire, Ashoke, everybody. Bags, shoes, clothing. I'd have expected the MD of Louis Vuitton, the big players, to be invited to dinner. Maybe even a Nigerian pavilion. Let's just do something crazy. Take the opportunity. Because that's the capital of fashion. I didn't see it. Did you?
No, I didn't.
Thought that was a missed opportunity.
It certainly was. Wow.
I see Burna Boy selling out 70,000 audience, 80,000, Davido. Those boys, Nigeria can't pay them for what they've done in terms of branding for us. I don't agree at times with the content of their music, but they are superstars. I was in Botswana last year on the Forbes trip, and we had dinner with the past president of Botswana. And when Davido arrived in the presidential villa, look, I can't explain it. Even the president left all of us. He went to sit down with Davido alone at a table. I'm not joking. First lady was dancing. They were singing what they didn't understand. Old women. It was unbelievable. Now, where's the merchandising?
Wow.
Where are the Ashoke face caps? Where are the beats, the Nigerian beats, when they perform at concerts? Yes. That is an economy that should be following them as they are going O2 center. That is an economy that should be feeding right back to Isenyi.
Wow.
To the Ashoke weavers. But it has to be intentional and deliberate. It has to be planned. They too should have a stake in it. So when we hear, I read somewhere recently, I've followed Coldplay for 2 decades, one of the biggest band in the world now. Did I read somewhere that Aya Star is going to be opening act for Coldplay on a world tour? Do people understand what that means? Do people understand what that means? Open act for Coldplay? Where's the business logic behind it? Where's the Nigerian merchandising industry to follow that, to follow it around? These are phenomenal opportunities that we are not tapping into. Because when you build that economy, then we can look where's the cut. I would have loved the president, for example. The president Buhari did a big thing with Uncle Bora's scheme on rice, which, despite its, its gaps and some corruption around it, we still saw it kind of like change the narrative in terms of rice production. In fact, 4 companies in Thailand, 4 rice producers in Thailand closed down. They went into bankruptcy because of Nigeria's rice production. Let's do a cotton revolution. Let's do a cotton revolution. Let's have a big moonshot project. Let's do a cotton revolution. There's Oncheck. There's a company called Oncheck. They're trying to do a lot of things in terms of local production. They are cultivating cotton in Ibadan, this and that. It's a value chain. This industry it was the largest employer outside government in the 70s, textiles. And then we collapsed it because of cheap imports, corruption played its own role. Our self-esteem played a big role. Because we sort of like, okay, foreign goods are better than our own, And then industry went. You can't build a creative economy ecosystem without going back to that. Because fashion is a key component. And our fashion is now attracting global attention. I've seen a lot of weddings with Europeans wearing our show. Okay, people, Nigeria is just so lucky. People just like us. They have every reason in the world, from Yahoo to this. They just like us. There's just something. These people have swagger. They just like us. When you go to a football game, the neutrals want Nigeria to win. They are now wearing our show. Okay, they are now, I'm seeing Europeans wearing ashoke, weddings, this and that and the other. I mean, it's fair and fine between, but we need to take that back to the cotton value chain, because guess what's happening? The Chinese and Indians are shipping us Ankara, Adire, and soon ashoke. You just can't ignore such massive opportunities as an economy. And I think we are not, the creative economy minister is saying a few positive things. I don't know whether our ministry is being supported adequately enough from a financial viewpoint. That may be part of the issue. But this really requires end-to-end thinking and execution, and very quickly, because that is where we can absorb a lot of youths. Gaming, using AI. AI is even going to challenge. That industry is going to challenge. Art is going to challenge. Yes, it's going to disrupt significantly. And we're not in that. We're not, regardless of all the policy, we're not in that game. So we just need to find out where in that AI chain we fit into, because we don't even have the energy to really be at the base of AI. That's a US-China game, as it were. But where do we slot in? And when we slot in, we need to be slotting in with an understanding of how we're deflecting from AI, further damaging our economy. Rather, we need to be figuring out how we're using it to get quantum multiplication of our outcomes in that sense. So creative economy for me, which encompasses film. Look at what those in film are doing. The Bolanle Austin Peters, the Moabudus, the actors, the Deyemi Okonlawos, RMDs, Wale Ojo, Funke Akindele. These people are doing for Nigeria. I know they're making money, don't get me wrong, but film, for example, is a vehicle through which you can project your fashion, your culinary attributes, your culture, your architecture. You can project your music. You can project multiple things about yourself in film. In such a way that you can't project in any other variant. Fashion is fashion. It only speaks to your food is food, music is music. Film can encapsulate this. And yet, when you talk to people in the industry, you really wonder how they continue. The challenges of funding, the challenges of distribution, the challenges of IP, the challenges of gatekeepers into the streaming platforms. The challenges are just Herculean in a sense. Yet that is an industry that can absorb the potential, because again, you look at the value chain of just film. Look at the number of people on set, costuming, music, production, post-production. You are looking at about maybe 30 sub-variants. These are things we need to intentionally fund and support, because building ROI cases are very difficult. Very, very difficult for things like film. Very, very difficult. And if you look at the model, people like India, them have done through their almost subsidies. Let's call it what it is. You catalyze those sectors. It can't be loans all the time. It even impacts on creativity. The producer is already worrying about it. 35% interest rate. You don't get the benefit of it. You can use film, for example, as a vehicle to promote your biggest brands. You can write scripts and stories around your big brands.
Just like America is doing with Hollywood.
America used film to literally...
What I hear you say?
I don't want to use the word indoctrinate, but they use creative economy to really capture the imagination of the world. When we were children, that was what was happening with Superman, Spider-Man, Captain America. Yeah. We didn't know. We were watching it for the entertainment value. They were programming us to understand that America is the main superpower. When we started sneaking, instead of reading our books, we'll be buying James Hadley Chase. Do you remember James Hadley Chase?
Yeah.
The novels?
Yeah.
The American guy always won. What's his name now? I've forgotten his name. The Russian guy was Malik. He always won. But these stories were captivating you. Hold instead of reading your biology book, you carry James at the chase and be sticking. But we've been programmed. That's creative economy.
America
Music,
was positioning itself as the superpower of the world.
Shalama, Lakeside, you name it. We were invaded with American music. We had some of our own then, Nikombaga, Dizike Falola, but it was not, there was no, now that's changed. That's changed.
So you're
You
talking
can go
about
to a
culture.
function now and it's end to end. Nigerian music.
Afrobeats. So you're talking about culture shaping. You're talking about using Afrobeats and movies and building culture shapers around it: fashion, food, entertainment, art, and finding our own specialization and our own niche in artificial intelligence and ICT, because we can't compete against the Chinas of this world and the Americas of this world. And it's important that we create an ecosystem, whether it's partnerships, it's PPP, it's government, but it cannot no longer be about, approaching it from the traditional banking perspective that we have always approached it from. Things really have to change. We really have to change our approach. We cannot and no longer be looking at approaching things from a traditional perspective. We have to approach it from an innovative and creative perspective. How do we give grants? How do we subsidize? How do we, ensure that we are playing a long-term game at reshaping how people begin to consume our Afrobeats, how people begin to consume our movies, how people begin to consume our food, and our clothing, our fashion. There's something that you're very passionate about, and that is art that you haven't spoken about. Can you quickly for about 5 minutes also educate us about that economy, art. There's this metal work that I've seen, the Shango guy, man. Did I hear you say that they flew it out of Nigeria? Just tell us, tell us that story about art.
Yes. Dotun Popola. I'm an amateur painter myself, as it were. And I've always been fascinated by art. And my darling brother, friend, 5 and 6, Laolu Mudashiru of blessed memory, introduced a young guy to me called Dotun Popola years back. He said Dotun wanted to see the Minister of Information, and because culture was under Alhaji Lai Mohammed at the time. So I said, I'll take you. No big deal. He's an accessible man. I know him. And he's like, just like that. I said, yeah, just come to Abuja. We'll go to his office. So he came. We went. Because Dotun's ambition is to build a museum, but I'll come to that in a second. And he spent about 400 million naira of his own money on this. The minister called out almost the whole office when he saw when we went through the Dotun's catalog. He's like, "What is this?" And we said, "How much are these things?" And Dotun is saying, "Oh, that one $50,000, that one $100,000." They're like, "What?"
Wow.
In Qatar, they don't have second-hand cars like we do. They gave him a car, break it up, do something.
Wow.
So Dotun does metal sculptures, and I mean, you should have, we spoke about. He does metal sculptures, and there was one he exhibited when we did a youth summit in Abuja. You were there. You came. You graciously came to speak to the youths, and when I was an informal advisor to the minister, as it were. And Dotun exhibited that piece, Shango, And so when the AIF invited me to present or participate in a panel in Morocco that had a segment on creative economy, they contacted and said, what about that work that was exhibited? So, and I got hold of Dotun, and we took this work to Morocco. That's a story in itself of resilience, the drama of getting the work there, because it was on short notice. This is a 10-feet standing sculpture. You know, it could only go on there was a flight on a particular day. It had to go as hand luggage or as baggage, because it couldn't meet cargo anymore, and it could only go on a wide-bodied plane, you know, because it had to be set properly, you know, all the checks, NDLEA, this, that, and the other. We would prefer to call it the African warrior, because sensitivity to the cultural nuances of Morocco, because, you know, Shango is was a violent
warrior,
king deity, as it were. The king of Morocco is the custodian of peace, so you can't carry violence into his territory in that sense. But let me tell you, Lanre, it turned out to be the star of the show. Did I send you the video? Did I send you the video?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
When it stood, everybody first moved back. I am not joking. Presidents, Governor Sanwo-Olu was there. Governor Sanwo-Olu was like, wow, this has to come back home. No, but he didn't leave Morocco. It was purchased there. Undisclosed sum. Oh yeah, no. You can't even be carrying that kind of thing around. Lanre, it's 10 feet.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it at the youth conference.
It's not small. And Dotun's aspiration is to do 100-feet sculpture.
Wow.
And he will do it. Initially, I had a vision to get 100 Dotuns across Africa in different countries. Then he would go and train and teach and what have you. But when people saw Shango, one of the key guys put me to the side and said, Femi, we need to change the model. It's not going to work. You can't find 100 of this guy.
Wow.
This guy is a genius. He said, it's a waste of time. You can't find it. It's not possible that you cannot find 100 of this guy. Dotun's work is that good. You know, he has a master's in art, so the movement in the form, and of course it speaks to eco-sustainability. Because everything is from discarded generator parts, discarded these brass taps. The hair of Shango is a bicycle chain. You know, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And everyone was like, yeah, this Nigeria. You know. So I said to him, you know what, you should do one of the Queen. He said, we'll do that. About wiggly for me. You know, that's what he said in Yoruba, meaning tie head tie. We'll carry it, we'll go and engage the British government, we'll put it somewhere, you know, in a prominent place in the West End. You know, we have to think, our thinking has to be, we can't,
futuristic, yeah.
No, we can't be pedestrian. My own vision, if I were an Aliko Dangote or a good brother, Mr. Otedola, maybe I should pitch it to them. Why can't we have a mini Selfridges in the West End? Flags of Nigerian, African countries, African store. Yes, major, big, sat proudly on an Oxford Street, on a Fifth Avenue, and inside it you are doing fashion, you are doing runways, you are doing live streaming to Nigerian tourists tourist destinations, you are doing film premieres, people at the door in Agbada, they're opening it. That economy links directly to the supply chain, links directly to the person weaving in Addis, to the person in Isenyi, to the person in, because that's what they do. They come and we help them build shopping malls. We use our money to build shopping malls. They go around Abuja. It's all shopping malls. Go to the shopping malls. What's the quantum of Nigerian content? You'll be lucky if it's 10% in value. In value. Because even when we do in quantity, it is not about planting chips. No, that value is small compared to when you look at the value of the imported item. It is small. So why can't we also flip the dynamic? Why can't we too go and put our retail across the world? We've proven, music has proven that it will be embraced. Why can't we go and put our retail in the major capitals of countries that have some cultural affinity with us, where we have a huge diaspora population, Canada, the US? Look, Larry, the opportunities for Nigeria, at times when I think about it, I wonder whether God just set out an experiment. I hope the Father did not, because if you run an analysis of countries as a balance of assets and natural liabilities, I challenge anyone to find me a country that will come out ahead of Nigeria. You have 900 kilometers of coastal water. You have oil. You have gold. You have lithium. Some say there's uranium in Bono Access. You have tin. You have every resource. The resource is humongous. You don't have earthquake. You don't have hurricane seasons like they do in America. The Japanese, those ones that have adapted to earthquakes, I mean, they're not going to run away now. So every now and then the earth shakes. Wow. We don't have these things. You don't have wildfires. You don't have. So on the balance of assets and liabilities by God, we are given everything.
Wow.
You have rivers. You then have arable land. How can you explain this? You have, God has given us absolutely everything. Everything. So harnessing it, I think will require us to rediscover a culture of shame, Larry. We are no longer ashamed. We're no longer ashamed. You can't have 36.5 million hectares of arable of land, and you'll be talking about food security. You'll be talking about food inflation, and people will be sitting in the churches clapping all day. No, this has to stop. We have to go back to shame. But this is not good.
Wow. Thank you very much, Femi. So in rounding this up, you talked about our gifts unparalleled, our talents unparalleled, our human capital unparalleled, our natural resources unparalleled, which means that we have to go to a place where we begin to rethink. We begin to revisit our roots and our identity. We need to begin to explore our art, our music. Afrobeats is taken all over the world. We need to explore that. We need to build upon that. We need to explore our fashion, our food. We need to begin to go back to our Greek days. We need to explore our weather, solar power. We need to explore, our entertainment industry. We need to plug in to areas of specialization as it pertains to artificial intelligence and social media. We need to position ourselves globally for retail because, we have a lot of stuff. We haven't even talked about tourism. You've talked about the beaches and all of that. We don't even have time to talk about Dirty December. Perhaps we'll have a part 2 of this conversation. So resources, natural resources, human capital, everything we have. So one last word for all our youth out there, Femi. One powerful message for them and one powerful message for our policymakers as we wrap up this conversation. One for the youth and one for the policymakers. They are definitely going to hear this. They're definitely going to hear this. So send a direct message to our Nigerian youth and African youth. Send a direct message to our policymakers, and then we'll wrap this up. Over to you.
Right. But before I do that, let me just quickly complete on the art, because I didn't actually finish on that. So art communicates the times, history, the tapestry of human color. And we have seen, the old masters have done well, the Bruces, the Grillos, and there's a whole new wave of young contemporary Nigerian artists as well, who are exploring foreign markets, but it's not enough. The UK, for example, I think imports about 8 billion from around the world, pounds, in terms of art. That was our colonial master and our most natural Western partner. The imports from Nigeria is minuscule. So that's something we really need to work on. I wanted to talk very quickly about Tunde Onokoya as well. Here's a guy who has become a global story. The chess player, amazing guy.
Book of record holder.
101 million people in the world play chess. Right? They all know that some Nigerian guy did something spectacular. What is Tunde Onokoya's MO? He always has his Nigerian cap. We should have rolled out chess editions by now. We should have the Tunde Onokoya brand. These are the kind of things. There's a 101 million market audience that will have it as souvenir. Just as an aside. So, but the key message for our policymakers: let's discover a culture of shame. Our behavior is shameless. That is the mindset shift. We need to be embarrassed about the way we do things. And I use rediscover because some will say that we had a culture of pride and shame before. And we need to rediscover that, because that will influence all the action steps. It's a mindset issue. To our youth, be what you say you can be. What do I mean? Don't sit there and criticize the generations before you just as an excuse to justify your own lack of self-control. Shame them. Show them that no, they don't drive facing one way. We will not do it. You people are shameless. We are useless old people. Shame us by doing the right things. Don't become an apple doesn't fall far from the tree. No, don't say, well, that's the culture we met. That's what we do. No, it's not true. Because you can't cherry pick what you are now. Global citizens. You are global citizens. Use a Larry Olusola as inspiration, not the person dancing by his Rolls Royce somewhere. No, so in those choices, tell us that we can be what we say we want to be.
Wow.
That's my message for the youth.
Wow. Thank you very much, Femi, for your wealth of wisdom. Thank you for the depth. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure.
For challenging us. Thank you for going really, really granular. And we thank you all listeners for joining on this Be Transformed podcast conversation. The transformation continues. It all starts with the renewal of your mind. And Femi says, let's go back to a season of shame. That's right, a season of shame. If you found great value in this conversation, make sure you don't keep it to yourself. Share it on YouTube, get others to subscribe, share it on Spotify and Apple. And we look forward to, another conversation. Now I'm looking at how do I get Dotun Bukwala, how do I get Tunde to interview them? So we're going to talk offline, Femi, because these are icons that people, the next generation, need to hear from about how they think, because it all starts from how they think. I mean, how do they position themselves? Excellence. How do they, convert their passion into a craft that the world is now looking out for. So thank you very much. We're here transforming one life and one mind at a time. Have a wonderful day. Shalom.
I am successful. I look for and find opportunities where others see nothing. I am a lifetime learner. I am solution focused. I see only solutions. I am a solution.